Sorry, I think we have it. I'm going to do a little bit of muting there. Go right ahead, Donovan.
Yeah. So I'm going to browse to my location for my data. I put it aside this morning for us to get to, but we're going to select the license-based data here and hit OK. And you'll be familiar with the screen that comes up. It pulls up a list of all the CSV files that are in there. And I'm sure everybody knows we don't just load the data, or I try not to. I try to do the transform. But for this one, because it is going through and looking at multiple CSV files, the default is combine and load, but we're going to do a combine and transform data today.
And just another quick point, I guess, or maybe a question, because all of those CSVs are the same format, they have the same fields. That's why we're able to do that, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's a important thing to point out. I'm glad you did. The reason I had to load the two different types of reconciliation reports into two separate folders for my from the one that we were using is because the formats are different, and so you can't just treat it as one separate thing. If you try to put different headers and different formats in there, it'll totally jack up the folder query. So good point. I'm glad you said that. So when Power BI goes through and starts looking at these, it pulls up the first one and does the data connection. That's pretty typical on CSVs. All right, so you can see here it goes through and puts together a helper query that is automatic. It takes care of all of the combining and appending the queries to each other and everything. And so if we just scroll down, you'd see this is pulling from here. We've got our 2017 June file, 2017 July file. We scroll down, we've got 2017 2008 file, and so it's gone through and it's appended all of these queries in these different CSVs. It's put them all together for you. So I'm going to show you the way that I cleaned this. I always take out the change type because Power BI, PowerQuery does a pretty good job of identifying the type of data, but it's not always exactly what I want. And then I'm going to go through and delete all my unnecessary columns here. Hopefully.
So as Donovan said, there's a lot of different ways to do these transformations. One of the ways that I like doing this, if I know what I'm working with, is that choose columns button there in the toolbar.
Mm-hmm.
So just another way to get at kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Cleaning this data up.
Good point. One of the other, so once I've got the number of columns, all the columns that I need, one of the other things that I needed to do was to assign the invoice date to each of these files. And I'm actually going to use that using this source name, which is based off of the CSV file that the data is pulled out of. So I'm going to replace these values in here. I'm going to take out .csv. And then I'm going to add a column in here, and I'm going to use from examples and selection. And if you just pick a few of these, it will automatically go through and fill out the rest of them for you. And I'm going to change the name of the column to invoice date. And now I don't need this part anymore, so I'm going to remove it. So I've got all my all the data that is needed for this. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and pull in my current customer list. So I built this as a CSV also. I did that originally by going through one of the early files that we had and reconciliation reports from Microsoft, and just deleted duplicates and then saved it as customer list.csv. So we'll open that. Same thing, it's gonna pull up your normal how do I code this dialog box. And then it did not promote the headers, so I'm going to go ahead and use first row as headers. And now I've got my information all set, so I can. Oh, I did forget one step. I did this earlier and thought, ooh, I need to remember to say it, and then I forgot to say it again. So if you delete the change type step in there, you do need to add that back in. So I'm going to go through and identify these with the different types that I want, just to be sure that it treats everything the right way. And then close and apply. So you can see we've got our tables over here. I wanted to show it was really smart and figured out that my two tables can be related based on customer name, and it's a one-to-many relationship, so it'll do filtering nicely and everything. And it means that I'll be able to use the state field in order to separate our subtotals once we build those. And then one of the things that I always do when I'm dealing with time-based data is I load up my own data table. And I got a great data table script from, I think, from the guys in a cube group. So I'm going to load a new table, and I just keep this script saved as a notepad file in one of my reporting folders so that I've always got it available.
And this is a great performance tuning thing. For those of you that don't know, Power BI will build a date table behind the scenes for every date column that you've got in your model. So if you're finding that you've got a lot of date columns in your model and things are kind of running slowly, this is a really good performance tuning kind of best practice there.
And then, and you can see it's already marked these. It's marked this table as a date table. That's what this different icon means. And you can use either one of these for doing those date relationships. And but it loads it as a separate table in here. So you do want to go ahead and create that relationship so that it can do the filtering. And then one last thing that I needed to do was build some measures to do some calculations for myself. And I always like to load those into a separate table, basically on the report. So the way that I do that, I enter data, and I just rename this as key measures. And you can see it loads it up as a regular table. If you expand it out, it has column 1 in it. So we're going to do a new measure in that table. And I'm going to do total sales. And I'm going to pick the total for customer. And then I also needed to have a couple of measures that will separately subtotal for my different states. So I'm going to do a new measure. We're going to call this Arkansas, if I can spell my state correctly. Total sales. I'm going to use calculate here. And it's going to be based off of total sales measure. And then you can set your filter once you use calculate. So I'm going to use it off of the customer list equals Arkansas. And then I'm going to build the same thing for Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing here, Donovan, with adding this query to organize all of your measures into. That just kind of helps keep your model really clean.
Yeah.
One thing that's coming to mind here, Donovan, that if you ended up doing a lot of measures and you wanted each one kind of to have each one for Oklahoma or Arkansas, that might be a good case for a calculation group. Maybe sometimes I go to those too quickly, but there is a way you can kind of say like, okay, whatever measure I drag in here, make one for Arkansas and one for Oklahoma. But
interesting.
Yeah. If you end up doing a lot more than sales, if you had, had 20 measures and you were needing to make 2 for each, basically, that might be a good case for that.
Yeah. Good idea.
Thanks.
So one of the things that I think is pretty slick from Power BI is, so it's going to keep this key measures as a table in my model, basically. And it looks the same as my other 2 tables in here. But if you delete that column 1 out of your table, Power BI is smart enough. It realizes that this is now a collection of measures. So it bumps it up to the top, so you can always see these key measures. And one of the ways that I use that is on one of the reports that I share with other folks. I have hidden the other tables out of the model so that they'll only use the measures instead of playing around and messing things up. So nice little feature there. So I've got all of the information together that I needed in order to be able to see how I'm doing and everything. And I knew that I wanted to look at this on a monthly basis. So I'm gonna start by building a slicer on here and put it over here on the left. And I'm going to use the year month function function over here. Now, Microsoft or Power BI automatically wants to put that into a slider format. And so if you drop another field in there, it'll turn it into a selection option, and then you can delete it out and it'll stay the same. And I always, my preference was to sort descending so that I could see the most recent ones. They were the ones that were most important to us. And now you can select multiple. You can change that to a single selection if you only wanted to see 1 month at a time. And then to get to the part that we all showed up for, the filled map. Oh, you want to click out of your slicer. And I'm going to put this down here. And we're going to put, if you open up customer list, you can click on state and put it in. And it uses Bing Maps. It automatically knows that these are 2 states in the United States. And so it fills those in. We wanted to see these as different colors. So I'm going to add that to Legend. It splits it into 2 different colors. And now I want to see how much the sales are for each separate state. So I'm going to create a card on here, and I'm going to drag Oklahoma total sales in. Now, one of the things that I always forget is you can actually format these measures for different types of data. So if you click on the tool on the measure itself, you can say, since this is accounting data, we want to change it to dollars currency. And change our decimal points. And again, I work with the CFO. He doesn't like to see rounded information. So I'm going to display all the units, and I'm going to change the text size on this down to 28 so it'll actually fit. And it's going on. And the other thing that I needed to do was turn off the background so that there was some transparency to it. So then you can resize this card, maybe, so that it fits in Oklahoma. And then we can copy and paste it. Drop Arkansas in there instead. And now if we select the different months, you can see that it's showing just how much each state spent on Microsoft licenses. So one of the things that we ran into, another issue that we had to solve was we were adding customers from time to time, and I didn't have a way to check and see if there were customers that needed to be added to my customer list. So one of the things that I did on my original was to create a table visualization that combined the state from the customer list with the customer name in license-based table. And then if I filter so that, let me pick a month where here we go. Well, okay, so it's not showing. So apparently all of my customers are in my customer list, but it might be because I used the wrong customer list. But if I had deleted some of our customers, I had set this up so that it would filter out if the state was blank and only show those new customers over here on the left. And by doing that, I would know, oh, I need to go back to my customer list file, add those in, tell what state it's associated with, and then it would, and then I refresh and it's automatically showing everything. So this is my map of charges. And then the last thing that I needed to do was to, excuse me, was to build out a chart that would show our progress towards that Microsoft revenue goal. And the way that I did that was I used the line and stacked column chart visualization. Make it nice and big. And I wanted to show the Arkansas and Oklahoma ones stacked on top of each other, and then total sales as a line value, so I'd be able to see total progress. And then put the date on there. Spread it out. And there you go. It's showing how we were progressing along in our goal towards our Microsoft revenue. So that was my report. I used that every month. I would go in, download our reconciliation report, refresh, and it automatically pulled in the new data. And then I could go in and tell our CFO, Oklahoma was charged. We need to account for $28.96 on our books for them, and then $23,928 on our books for Arkansas. Let me go back to my presentation quickly. Some of the things that I learned, again, like was said earlier, you do have to put different formatted CSVs. You have to put make sure that the format is the same in all of the CSVs in a single folder, or it breaks the query. And so the way that I learned that it breaks the query is 1 month I saved the license-based information into my usage-based folder and couldn't figure out why everything was broken. Once I went back and looked, I figured out, oh, I need to take that one out and put the right folder or file in there. So make sure to watch on that. The shape map, you can actually zoom in and zoom out on that one, and that can be helpful if you're looking at, say, multiple locations across a multi-state region. It also has an auto zoom feature on it. So if you select only, like if I only wanted to look at Arkansas data, we could throw, let's show you real quick. It's going to totally mess up the way the cards work. So just ignore that. But if we only wanted to look at Arkansas, it zooms in right on Arkansas, which is a nice feature. But sometimes you don't want it to do that. So you can actually go in down here in the map controls, and you can turn off auto zoom. And then when you select a certain one, it will it'll stay at the zoom level that you have picked. So that's just a personal preference on that. I have some that it's frustrating, and so I've turned off auto zoom, and I have some that it's helpful. So, and then the other thing to know is that for some locations, Bing Maps has trouble finding the correct location, and so you have to kind of wiggle around in it. My boss, the president of the company, has a report that he's put together, and it he learned that one of the counties in Arkansas, when you put it into the location, you actually have to say that that county is in Louisiana, and then it'll fill the right place in Arkansas. So if you notice that your map is not treating some of the locations properly, it might be because Microsoft is broken on the back end. But that's everything that I had. I guess any questions or anything?
Can I ask more about that date table from Guy in a Cube?
Yeah.
Why is that helpful to you to use that?
So let me pull that back up. One of the things, other than just making sure that my model is clean and that it's running smoothly, is they built it so that there are a number of different options for sorting your data or breaking the data up. You can look at week numbers. They added in year month, and so they have a function up here that calculates that year week. And so if you're looking at like I've got one table that's a rolling 52 weeks visualization. I use that feature, and it keeps it going and sorted properly. And so that's why I started using it.
Helping with that sorting so you don't end up with April, August,
right,
whatever comes next.
Yeah.
February, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And if you notice at the top of that, it has the base calendar equal to the calendar auto function. And the calendar auto function will accept one argument, I believe, in that function, which is the month that your fiscal year begins, I believe. So you could
I
actually
think
have
that's right.
this, you could actually have this set up to mirror how your fiscal periods work
Yeah.
at your organization.
Does your group use an unusual fiscal period since you support so many municipalities or maybe schools or things like that? Microsoft uses a weird one, I know too. They
Yeah,
start in July, I think. Yeah.
September,
Oh,
actually.
sorry. Yeah.
And then, yeah, Oklahoma government entities have a July to June fiscal year, and Arkansas has a January to December. We started out as an Arkansas company, only just recently expanded into Oklahoma. So our company is a regular calendar year, fiscal year, but we do have to deal with that difference with Oklahoma fiscal years too.
Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
That was awesome, Donovan. Thank you so much. I wonder if the one of the things that you might be able to do in your model is identify your state field as a geolocation.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if that would help at all. Power BI is pretty good at figuring that stuff out. So, but just like you were showing us, we can choose a currency type for our data. You can choose for your field that it is a state or province.
Yeah.
Does anyone else think of situations where that kind of CSV merging and file processing might be helpful? I think this is a good example of like, in a sense, I mean, Microsoft sending you a monthly. You could think of it as a statement. It's got a picture of your activity for the month, right? So maybe maybe other situations, phone bills, those kinds of things, right? Where here's all bank recs and stuff like that could be helpful.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you all aren't seeing what Zoe is posting in our chat here, she's got some great links for you all there, ways to support multiple fiscal year calendars in one desktop file, and also maybe a way to have CSV files with different formats in the same folder that you could pull in. I haven't watched that video yet, but sounds like an interesting trick.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Sorry, I was being quiet. I was working on other stuff while I was listening in. But yeah, so I actually did try it this morning. It didn't work for mine, but I had a lot of columns on mine, so mine was survey data that I was trying to merge in, and they like to change their survey questions, even though they say they're not going to, from quarter to quarter. So that always made it tricky. But yeah, and then the other one I linked in was actually a question that came over on the Power BI community forums, and I made a blog post off it. But what it's cool is you can have like a slicer. It says I want to see it, so you could have a slicer on your report. For this one, you're like, I want to see it by regular calendar year, I want to see it by Arkansas fiscal, I want to see it by the other fiscal, and it can support that. So just as an FYI there. So
Donovan, would you mind sharing again kind of the PowerQuery view of your folder sources?
You bet.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to look at kind of look at the function, look at the actual kind of PowerQuery or the M code there. just to highlight too, and this is something I need to learn. We all could learn to do a little bit more with, but let's see. If you click that first step that says source, please, in the query steps, that everything in PowerQuery really is a function. And so you can see the function in this case is a built-in function called folder.files, and it accepts a parameter that is the link to your folder, right? The result of that is a list of well, thank you, Eric. I saw your comment there, but anyway, that's for you, Donovan, in the chat. But that's a listing of all the files in that directory, in that folder. And then, so you can think of them as records, right? They're just a bunch of records. And so from this point, you could do lots of things. You could use the extension column to filter out if you had a folder that, there's images and mixed in, or PDFs, just take the CSVs. You could certainly think of the date modified column to say, well, just give me those that were modified on a certain date, or to pull the year out of that column to say, here's 2020 files and here's 2021 files and things like that, right? Of course, his name makes that pretty, looks like you kind of did that with your name and made that pretty easy on yourself too. So, yeah, just some thoughts about that. And I'm thinking, Zoe, like, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I mean, you can even write your own functions with PowerQuery. So as if you have some kind of gnarly data challenges, and you've been kind of saying, man, I wish there was some sort of free tool to script out these data challenges. It might be tough to get your code written one time, but once you got it written, you could have, in fact, they're actually doing that here on the left-hand side where you see this, they made a function called transform file. Because it's sort of, yeah, it doesn't look like anything. You actually have to look at it in the advanced editor when you write your own functions. So to do that, you actually just right click on the transform file and say, show me that in the advanced editor, but it shows you just the code, pure code of it. Anyway, it's kind of a cool thought to say, boy, I could, based on what file I'm encountering, I could route it to different functions to say, this is how you transform this, and this is how you transform that. So you can get pretty sophisticated. Now, I guess the only caution being maybe you'd write something that only you understood at the end of the day, but it's a pretty powerful tool. Thanks for demoing it.
One of the other things that I've done is if I have a report that I know is using similar data, but I want to do a different transformation on it, I will start a new Power BI and do the data connection, and then copy and paste from the advanced editor from one of those files to the next one. And then I don't have to go through all the data transformation again. I only have to do it that one time.
It's cool. Yeah. Yeah, copy and paste. Then you can copy it here from the left side, like right from the queries list, and then just say copy and paste into a different Power BI file, or even into a data flow if you're using those. You can into that web editor. Kind of cool.
Yeah, you can also use the PowerQuery, the advanced editor in Excel. So you can go to just PowerQuery in Excel if you know, especially for your CFO who really just likes to see it in Excel. You can actually give him a table that's the same source as Power BI. And so I like that you literally just copy it, paste it over there, hit go, get your data exactly as you had it in Power BI. And same with Power Data Flows, though I am a little grumpy at data flows because some of the stuff you can do in Power BI desktop on a pro license you cannot actually do in data flows without premium, which includes like referencing other tables, which I do a lot. So just watch out there. Sometimes there's gotchas. But for the most part, they're pretty transportable.
So it's that pro license limitation. It always looks really great because mostly it'll work, but there's certain things you're saying you paste that script in there and it goes like, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. That's a bummer. Yeah, thanks for some good conversation here in the chat, and yeah, Stephen, that's a good question. And Jeremy, it looks like you want to talk through your response on that that way I don't have to interpret it here.
No, sure. I mean,
Yeah.
the question was just, does Power BI work better with lat long, or is it better to use a city, state, country kind of hierarchy? And really, the tool works amazingly with both of those. So, I've been in situations where I don't always have lat long available. And so I just, city state is something that you normally have. But if I have lat long, I'll use it. It really kind of just depends on how accurate you need to be. Obviously, lat long is going to be the most accurate of the two. One of the things that I would just reiterate, and something that I pointed out during Donovan's presentation, is that you just want to make sure that those data types are set up. And I think that it might actually be called a data category in the ribbon. But I put a link to an article there that has some pretty good tips on how to set up your data for map visualizations.
Nice.
Yeah, I would definitely reiterate that point. Having them coded right up there really helps with the map visual. And sometimes if you have counties that are in multiple states, if you just put the state and then a county under it and then just drill through down, it'll put it in the right state, even though it's only showing the counties on there. I ran into that a couple times. And then just be careful, there's a county and a country, which are very close looking. If you get the wrong one, it won't work as expected at all.
That's true. That's true. I would say there probably is a best practice, like if you can use if you do have lat longs, I mean, that will tend to work better. That will tend to be more precise. It's just, there's no two ways of interpreting it. As long as you're using negative and positive correctly, and you know what your coordinate system is. There are different coordinate systems out there, but for the case of our map. And then you could avoid things like your CFO found there, Donovan, with if there's this county that has the same name, or this city that has the same name in Louisiana or other places, Paris, is going to pop up in France, not Texas, probably. Right? So, yeah, things like that. So that's just a matter of like geocoding. And so sometimes you can geocode addresses for, in low volumes for free, or you can pay APIs. Google and Bing both have those APIs. You can, it's not usually exorbitant until you get into, I want to do $1 million a month or something, several thousand a month. They might start charging you for it. But if you get a great map out of it, it'd be worth it. So you could get really good location intelligence. So, yeah. But yeah, excellent. Thanks to everybody for your great questions, and glad that this was helpful. I always make a task for myself, record the meeting, and I remembered probably about 5 minutes into your presentation, Donovan. So I think we caught the meat of I think we caught all the demo for sure. I really appreciate you kind of setting up the business problem and kind of the way, here was the problem we faced, because we all kind of face those problems, and looks like you came up with a really nice solution that's going to save you a bunch of time. No more copying, pasting every month, munging the data, cleaning it,
Exactly.
writing up all these steps. Just let Power BI do the work for you. That's cool. And thanks for presenting today.
Definitely glad to.
Yeah, cool. So with that, I will take this recording and get it posted up on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Try to get a link into the chat to that right now. There we go. And then we'll put the files on our community Power BI site. That's the main site for files, although I do go ahead and try to put up the events on Meetup and the old community site and the new community site. We are trying to centralize on the new community site, but you're welcome to RSVP in any way that works well for you. I just want to get the word out. In fact, next time I'll probably also make a LinkedIn event that you can respond to. So just any RSVP is fine. We don't have to plan for food or anything. So at this event, but speaking of which, I'll go ahead and share my screen again and talk about our March meeting. Our next, we're planning on in person. We're gonna work toward that. Hopefully by the end of March, some numbers are looking a little better. I do know that our hosts have already said, yeah, we've got the room booked, and they were ready to have us at any time. So hopefully by March, things will just be better, right? Better and better all the time. So Delisi has built a new office kind of complex in Oklahoma City. They were closer to downtown. They moved a little farther north in town. and it's in a really neat area that there's a lot of development going on in. So we'll plan on doing an in-person meeting there. Probably try to make it a fairly long meeting, like a 3 or 4 hour meeting, so that it's worth driving down for. And I'd also mentioned there's some neat places nearby. I need to check this out, but I know they built a place where you can like go play pickleball or something. And so I'm kind of wondering how nearby. So I'm kind of wondering about how we could incorporate
I know
that.
what that one is, Brent. That's
Chicken and pickle.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I
Good. Yeah.
went there one time with
Is it fun? Is it
It
good?
was fun. It was a lot of
All right.
fun actually.
Well, I mean, I know it's not Power BI related, but people might like to have fun, I guess. We could see about working it in, or we might get better at conversation. Maybe we do that after. Maybe that's the post event gathering there. So, but yeah, that's the plan. March 22nd. I'll tell you frankly that I didn't really. This is a Tuesday, and so we had communication breakdowns when we were planning this a little bit, and I think the year of 22 got mixed up with the day of the month, but it's a fine. I mean, Tuesday is also a good day of the week, so hopefully that won't mess anybody up to do it on a Tuesday. And I'll get details out about that just as soon as I can. Here that's only 6 or 7 weeks away. I also think we'll try to do an online option as well. I'm just going to say the online option won't be as good. So what I don't want it to do is discourage you from making plans. If you're thinking about attending and you think, yeah, I could take a day and go down to Oklahoma City, do some great networking, learn a bunch, probably work while I'm there, right? I got a laptop. We're connected from everywhere. So don't say, if you don't mind, don't say, well, I'll join online. And then, because when the day comes, you'll get busy, stuff will come up, right? You can take that time to give yourself a dedicated day of learning and networking. So, but if you cannot make it, then we will probably try to at least get the presentations online, so you can learn from afar. But you will miss the networking and the in-person connections and possibly pickleball. So that being said, that's all I had for today. Jeremy and I did meet up, and that's all I had, but I know there's a couple more announcements. We did meet up and kind of plot out the next couple of months as far as we could see, but our hospital numbers were really weird at the time, so maybe we'll be able to do more in person. But we're thinking to do is like an in person each quarter, and maybe online's the 2 months in between. So online in April and May, and in person in June, or something like that. That's what we're planning on. So I get that calendar out there. So I need to get that just published out there as soon as possible. Now I think there might be one other announcement, but I'll just throw it up to anybody who would like to share anything. Anyone?
Yep. Brent, I don't know what your last announcement is. One thing that I'll just share really quickly is that I really appreciate all of you being here and being part of this community. Thank you so much. We're always looking for speakers, and you don't have to be an expert at Power BI to be a speaker. In fact, we would really like to have some folks who that would not consider themselves experts at all. I loved this presentation, Donovan. I thought it was great. We just kind of, it's nice to have some stuff that is more advanced, but it's also good to have some of the introductory stuff as well. The only other, so if you're interested in speaking at our group, please, get in touch with either Brent or I and let us know. The only other thing that I'll say just really quickly is, as a benefit to being part of this community, we want to avail ourselves to any questions that you may have. So feel free to reach out to us directly. I know that there are the community forums, and you can get some great answers out there. I know Zoe is out there always answering questions on the community forums, so you can get some real expert answers from posting out there. But if you are just more comfortable with reaching out to Brent or I, feel free to do so. We're happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of that. The Power BI community forums. There are so many experts out there who will definitely jump in and help out there. And so for the last announcement that Brent was alluding to was that so I'll actually be stepping down as the leader of the Oklahoma Power BI user group. Unfortunately, I'm going to be leaving state.